Hello, hello, hello! Welcome back to the Feel Good Factor. I'm Susmita Veganosaurus and I'm so glad you could join me here today. Hey everyone! Today I wanted to talk to you all about something that's so important. Boundaries, boundaries, boundaries. It's such an important part of our life. This is something that's been on my mind for quite a while now, and I've been wanting to cover this on the podcast. I never quite got around to it. But in the last few days, the thought kept cropping up in my mind once in a while, here and there, with different situations that I've been seeing around me. And then, of course, the final inspiration for me to do this happened yesterday evening when I was drawing my goddess cards. Well, guess what the card was? It was all about boundaries. I'm like, okay, this is the kick I needed in my butt to finally get around to talking to you all about this because, yes, I know that somebody in my audience has to get this message. So, yeah, if you're listening, this is for you. Often we forget to create boundaries in our own lives, boundaries between ourselves and others, but also boundaries within the various aspects of our own life. Usually, when we think of boundaries, we think of work life balance and the boundary between both those things. But boundaries are a lot deeper than that. It's not just about the main things, the main aspects of our life, but also multiple sub aspects between which we forget to create boundaries. There's a lot of overflow. So, say for example, if there is a certain part of work which is giving us a feeling of fulfillment and joy and creativity, we kind of let that merge into the having fun part of our lives. We don't give separate time for ourselves, for me time, for self care, and for enjoying things because we feel like, oh, we're getting all this fun from the work that we're doing. But that just isn't enough because work is work and it is drawing a lot of your energy, your time out. And it's not fair to yourself if you are immersing yourself into that. And just because it's bringing you happiness, forgetting to care for all the other aspects of your own self. But first, before all that, where we need to set very clear boundaries, it's very important is setting them between ourselves and others, the outside world, because that is the primary one. If you're allowing people to suck up your time and your energy, then you really won't have anything left for yourself to even create boundaries within. Those sub boundaries don't even come into question because you don't have any time, energy, none of it left to give to yourself. So it's so important to create these. Now, what are these boundaries? What are examples, some of the examples of boundaries from my life? I could share some of that. When I was new to my restaurant business, I had just started working there and I was full of enthusiasm and energy and joy. I'm like, oh my God, I love my job. I love what I'm doing. And I used to be like so full of energy there. And what I did at that point of time was I made the mistake of giving my personal contact out to a lot of people. Like, oh, if you need anything related to Carrots, my restaurant, call me. You can ask me anything, you can call me, you can reach out to me. And then I didn't create these neat boundaries there. So a lot of my work stuff started flowing into my personal, eating into my personal life and my personal time. But as the years went by, I started realizing that I couldn't afford that kind of a drain on my energy, because if people were taking up my personal time instead of looking to my team or looking to places where they can easily find the information anywhere else, then it would just be such a waste of my efforts, my creativity, because I cannot focus on creating these beautiful, delicious vegan dishes and these events and all the wonderful things that we do as a part of our restaurant. If I was just wasting my time responding to people's simple questions like, oh, is the restaurant open today? Can we order from you today? And whatnot. As I grew in my business, as I grew with my experience, I started creating very, very clear boundaries. So if it was carrots related stuff and if it was, guest customer related stuff, then they very specifically needed to get the information from my team. There are people whose jobs are about answering these questions and dealing directly with the guests. So I started slowly. You don't have to be rude about it, right? You can do this in a very, very sweet and gentle way, but you have to be so, so firm about it. Very gently but firmly, I started practicing this habit of whenever anybody had any question which was not relevant to me answering it, which I felt that they could get it either from the website or get it either from my team or anything like that, where my actual presence was not required in this, I would very gently start directing people to contact my team and talk to them about it and ask their questions to the team. And regardless of how I was placed during that day, whether I was busy or free or had all the time in the world, I would make sure that I would inculcate this habit among the guests, among my customers. In many cases, they were my friends too, and in some cases, they weren't. But no matter what, I would always gently direct them to, reach out to my team for all these questions that they had. It was a very small step, but it made a huge difference to the kind of time and mental space and peace that it created for me. I started realizing the importance of respecting these boundaries and how valuable these were for me. And because of that, I was also able to respect boundaries of other business owners. I would make sure that I'm not expecting some special treatment, and for every little answer, every little thing, if I needed help or answer, that I needed the owner of the business to help me with it, I would understand the value of their time, and instead I would always start looking for ways to reach out to the team. And only if things get really out of hand and if there really isn't any other option, then I would reach out to the business owner, the entrepreneur behind it. That I felt made me a better customer and made me more valued, more valuable to the businesses that I like to support too. So it was a great lesson for me. This is just one example of how it's so important for you to create boundaries between your business life or your work life and your personal life, because when one overflows into the other, it takes quite a bit out of you. And if those clear boundaries are there, then it gives you a lot more time to focus on the things that you're good at, that only you can do. There are some things that only you can do, and you will have time to do that. Yeah, I have to tell you this, as an entrepreneur, we all think that yes, personal service is important, and if whatever, no matter what day or night, if especially if you're a startup new entrepreneur, you think you have to be available and you have to go according to what the customer wants, what the guest wants, and that they may get offended if you're not going to be available to them. But that is actually a load of rubbish, and we just put that into our minds. It's just a conditioning or a wrong belief, I would say, that we have inside us. because most of the people are very understanding about this. They're like, oh yeah, okay, fine, so you're not the person to talk to anymore, so this is the person, sure, I'll contact this number instead. And yes, if there are one or two people who take offense or make a fuss, well, honestly, you don't want such people to be your guest or your customer or your client or whatever, because they're not worth it. If somebody is not valuing your space, your time, your effort, energy, and all these things, then they're not worth it, honestly. And believe me, when you start setting boundaries and creating these systems and putting them in place and expecting people to follow that, you will start attracting the right kind of people to support your business, the ones who are understanding, who are thoughtful, and also which is even more important, you will also set this example out there to people. You will give them permission to set boundaries in their own life, because they'll be like, yeah, if this business, who is known to be really good with their guests, and who is known, like with Carrots is known for our personal touch, if we set these boundaries and we say that no, you have to do this a certain way, and we really can't change everything and keep on giving to you, but we can serve you best when we have you following our systems, then it gives them permission to think that, oh, I can do this in my life too. So that is again a very important part, because that is how you change mindsets and you change systems all around, right? You disrupt preset systems of overworking and all those things. So that's how you can do it. You can do it by being an example yourself. Another thing is setting time limits. This is, yes, it's important for both, like for an entrepreneur, yes. In terms of my example, where we have certain time limits for, say, the restaurant's closing time or restaurant's opening time and the break time and things like that. This is something I've been very mindful of right from the beginning, because I don't like the idea of overworking my team, because these are very talented, dedicated people, and I believe that respecting their effort, their time, their boundaries is very important too. So yeah, I leave it up to them how far they want to take, and see how tired they are that day, whether they want to take that extra half an hour, extra 1 hour, if they have the capacity to do it on that day. I leave it totally up to them, but usually I again discourage people. When we had the dine in, right now, of course, because of the quarantining and pandemic, we are only doing deliveries and takeaways. But even when we had the dine in, I would make sure that, say, if the restaurant closes at 10:30, we would make sure that our last orders, because the kitchen will close about half an hour before that. Otherwise, the restaurant's never going to close till midnight. And then we would always, very politely and nicely request people who came in late, whether they could do a takeaway, or if we really couldn't serve them, or limit what we could serve them. I always set this as an example, because here's the thing. By doing this, by not overextending ourselves, as a team, we are so much better and we function so much better after we've had a good rest and a good break, on the next day, or after the break time or whatever. We are able to give fantastic service with smiling faces and, joyful hearts to all the people who are respecting our timelines, who are respecting our boundaries, and they are spending time at the restaurant when the restaurant is actually open, without expecting us to just go out of our way only for them. That is what creates that beautiful, joyful atmosphere whenever somebody visits our place. So yes, so as a business, setting time boundaries are extremely important too. And this is something that people who are in the corporate world should definitely take into consideration. I've seen this happen, especially during this work from home situation during the pandemic. I initially thought that, hey, all the people who I know who are in corporate, my family members and things like that, I always felt that they're going to have a more peaceful and happier life, because They are saving all that extra time on travel, those 2 hours up, 1 hour down, all those extra unnecessary wasted time. They're saving all of that. But unfortunately, the way I'm seeing the corporate culture work is that people are being made to work late hours and start really early. And not only are they working through those hours where they would have been traveling to work and back, but they're working beyond those hours. And I'm seeing this happen in a lot of cases. In some cases, yeah, it's the fault of the company, of the organization, but in many cases it's not even that. Even if the work culture is great, the organization culture is great, the people who are working are not able to plan things. They're not giving priority to planning out and again setting very, very clear boundaries between their work life and their personal or home life. And I'm seeing that there is absolutely no time for self care. There's no, there's barely any time to spend with family, though everybody is at home all day long. I'm seeing a lot of that happen around me, in friends, relatives, family members. And yes, they do complain about it, but ultimately, I believe that it is your responsibility to set those boundaries and say that when I was going into work and working a certain number of hours and coming back, these are the number of hours I would put into this, and the rest of the day was mine. Even in cases of where there are some late night calls because you're working with different time zones and everything, even then the number of hours of work that you put in would always be limited to a certain amount. It wouldn't overflow to the crazy extreme extent that it's overflowing now. So definitely this is something that I encourage. If you are in the corporate environment, I highly, highly encourage you to please calculate how much time you used to actually spend before and how much you're spending now. And if there's too much of an overflow, make very sure to set those clear boundaries. And again, this is something where you have to disrupt a culture that's already there. I see this happening especially more so with the Indian culture. Like a cousin of mine who works in the US was saying that this wasn't the case years ago in the US, but because the Indians have taken their work is worship nonsense to the US, even the culture there is changing because these people are working all these extra hours and they think it's okay to work beyond a certain number of hours a day. It's okay to work through the weekends. It's very sad to hear that because, sure, work is worship, but there's a limited number of hours you should be involved in that worship, and it's not the only worship. It cannot be the be all and end all of life. So stop glorifying working long hours. Look at where you're doing this, look at people around you who are doing this, and see what best you can do to really disrupt it. The situation we're in right now, it's not going away anytime soon. This is the new reality. It's no more like, in March, April, May, we all thought, okay, after the pandemic, we'll do this. But it's no more after the whatever. We can't expect that anymore. It's going to be quite a while before things change, and nothing is going back to the way it was. So, this is a golden opportunity that we have got right now to create a new work culture, and we have to really, really utilize this. Going back to your internal boundaries between your own life, again, look at what you're doing in your whole day, and first of all, getting off from doing only work all day. When you get that time and that energy and that space back to yourself, look at where you're spending it, and create again those boundaries. How much time are you spending in self-care, whether it is meditation, yoga, exercise, or just walking around, or anything where you're taking care of yourself, your body, cooking some good meals, delicious meals for yourself, nutritious stuff for yourself. How much time are you spending in self-care? How much time are you spending in doing something creative, something fulfilling in your life? And how much time are you spending in having fun, doing fun activities that bring you a lot of joy in life? These are just couple of examples of sub boundaries that I have, but there are so many more. But clearly, you need to measure this in your life. And finally, very importantly, also boundaries between people who are living in the same house, between family members, or even boundaries between very close friends. We are spending a lot of time together. Where are those boundaries set? Because ultimately, you do need some time and some space for yourself. I have seen this happen multiple times where moms and wives and women, particularly, who are running families, who say things like, I spend all my time doing this work, which can be any kind of work like social work, helping others, some kind of work that brings you joy, right? But it's still giving. You're giving of yourself to others. But they believe that, oh, that is my me time, because the rest of the time I'm doing things for my family, taking care of my husband, my kids, blah blah blah, and all that. They're doing the housework. So doing this other external work is my me time. Sorry, it's not your me time. Please don't kid yourself. If your energy or time is being given to something outside of yourself, then that cannot be considered me time. Make very sure to set those boundaries for yourselves too, because yes, as we go forward, we really, really need this clarity between each portion of our lives. And not only do we need it, we need to create this clarity to others, so everybody knows where your boundaries are, everybody who is a part of your life. And most importantly, like I said, you need to set an example so that you can disrupt this existing culture where personal time and space is not respected, and make it okay, and make it, or highlight the importance of actually creating these clear boundaries and making people realize there's nothing rude about it. It's just something that you can do for the highest good of yourself, and for your family and friends, people around you, and for the people that you're serving. So, yeah, so that's about it today when it comes to boundaries. This is all I can talk about, but there's so much more, of course, and I would love to hear back from you. Think about, where boundaries are lacking in your life and where you can work on them, or even if you've had an experience of where you didn't realize this is where boundaries should be, but later you realize the hard way and then put things into place. And most importantly, if you have any tips to share with people on how they can create these boundaries, how they can be conscious about this whole thing and make it happen in their lives, all of it, write into me, or leave me a voice message on the episode's blog post. On the main page, you can see that there's an option for you to leave a voice message for me. You can find the link to the episode's main web page, the blog page, in the show notes. So visit that and leave me a voice message, or write into me at Veganosaurus, Veganosaurus, on Instagram, or email me at thefeelgoodfactor at veganosaurus.com. I would love to hear back from you, because I believe that this is such an important topic, and just one person's experience isn't enough. People need to hear what your experience has been with the boundaries thing. So write into me about this, or leave me that message, and I would be happy to share it with my tribe. Thank you so much for listening. Visit my website, veganosaurus.com, www.veganosaurus.com. Scroll down to the bottom and subscribe to my mailing list, because I share a lot of interesting stuff on it. Stuff that I don't share anywhere else, neither on my podcast nor on social media. It's a part of my feel good tribe, and these people mean a lot to me, everybody on the mailing list. So do subscribe to it. And yeah, if you are enjoying the show, please leave a review or rating or subscribe to the Feel Good Factor on your preferred podcast platform, especially Apple Podcasts. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Feel Good Factor. I'm Susmita Veganosaurus, and I'm looking forward to talking to you again very soon. Bye!